Hey there, welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Doug.
I'm Mike.
Today's episode, we're going to talk about the Cybertruck drama around rusting. Is it or isn't it? We'll get into that. Rivian still losing money, doing layoffs again, all kinds of drama there. All that and more. Episode number 60 starts now. Gentlemen, welcome. We're back.
We're back.
It hasn't been that
We're
long,
back.
actually, this time. This is pretty short break. Already.
Yeah.
So everyone doing good? Everything good? The short time we've been away, nothing new, nothing crazy.
Well,
Everything's
not
pretty
sure
good.
That far.
I would like to give a little update. A couple episodes ago, we talked about my wireless access point, and
We did.
as Seb said, we got a nice little lesson on on Wi-Fi antennas or whatnot. But anyway, that's been working really well for me. I just wanted to let folks know. It was a really
There's a
it was a simple little project, and it really is a quality of life thing. Like, I'm not worrying about my car. It got an instant update without me having to spend time in it with my phone tethered and whatnot. And
Nice.
so yeah, and also just connecting to my car is a lot faster. I did learn something though. It seems that the car, when it sort of sleeps, it disconnects from Wi-Fi, and just by looking at the clients on the access point. Like, when I first connect to it, it does it over the cellular network, and then it wakes up the Wi-Fi connection. Yeah, just me connecting to my car is so much faster instead of me sitting there. I'm like, what's taking so long, sort of thing, when I just want to warm my car up before I go out to it or whatever. So,
Sure.
so yeah.
Yeah, you reminded me, Doug. I wanted to get my FSD back in the middle of a trip, and I'm literally on a snow-covered mountain with my phone tethered to my car, praying I can download the update to have it work. And about midway through, I'm thinking this probably isn't one of my smarter ideas.
Yeah, yeah, that's rough. I'll say another thing too. So the adapter I showed was just a cheap one. I did get another one that was a little bit better because I found it was really nice just to have my phone connecting to while I was outside. I had a little project where I was cutting down all the branches that were hanging over the car, in the spring that drop berries, and then the birds like to, do things on my car.
Sure.
So wintertime is the best time to deal with that kind of stuff because there's no foliage on the trees. So I took down these branches that were dropping stuff, and my
Foliage. No, I'm sorry.
foliage.
That's
It's
a
foliage.
that's a joke.
Inside joke.
That's a Simpsons reference, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
So anyway,
Sorry.
nothing else with
Cool.
that.
That sounds good. So don't do updates when you're not at home. Now Doug can do updates while he's at home.
That's right.
That's what I got from Mike. Don't do updates when you're not at home.
Well,
And then
yeah, I mean,
Doug's Wi-Fi is working great now.
doing the updates on the road is fine, but doing that 8,000 feet with spotty cellular is probably not the best idea. You know?
Yeah. I'm still waiting for my FSD 12 update, but hopefully we'll get to that soon.
Well, you need that mobile Starlink, right?
Yeah.
That's what that's what will get you
Put it on the
connected.
roof.
Yeah.
Actually,
or
so-
I mean, just have it ready.
So I don't think we talked about this before. Not we have topics to jump into, but Starlink, SpaceX. I was totally surprised. Did you see their financials?
No, I did not.
So SpaceX last year now actually makes more money from Starlink than from doing rocket launches.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, they made it was about 2 billion or so from rocket launches, and they made over 3 billion from Starlink. My mind was blown. I was like, wow,
Wow.
that business grew.
It's
Volume, man,
it's
volume.
the wonders of volume. Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
that. SpaceX has more launches than a whole nation's combined.
Rivian,
right?
Yes.
Rivian
Um,
can take a lesson in volume.
And yet their
Yeah.
most of their profitability comes out of them doing their satellite internet. So that's really cool.
And that
Anyway,
and that was the whole goal of Starlink anyway. Like, okay, here's a profitable business that we can do for SpaceX. There's been talk of like spinning it off, for years. Like, I don't know if they're going to do that or not.
yeah.
It makes some sense, but SpaceX having direct access to that capital is within the company is probably a good thing, particularly as
Right.
Starship takes longer to happen. So,
And I do personally know several people that use it as internet from where they live, and they love it. So,
Okay.
so from a user standpoint, supposedly it's quite good.
Well, aside from
Um,
those 30 random satellites they need to burn up because they got them wrong. But
it happens. Cost of doing business. Hey, they're making money, so.
yeah, they have to
Apparently.
deorbit
And there's
about
several
100 of them.
competitors working on it. Like Amazon's trying to do that now. Bezos is trying to catch up to Musk. But anyway, so it'll be interesting to see. Sorry, so let's jump into today's actual topic.
yeah, the real topic.
That was a long several tangents. Cybertruck. Okay, Cybertruck oxidizing the rust. What's going on there? So we didn't really touch on it until more info came out. So this story first originally broke a few weeks ago.
Something like that.
People accusing Cybertrucks of rusting. Basically pointing out like, oh, you don't paint them. Well, you're idiots. There's a reason you paint cars. Part of it is to protect it from rusting and things like that. But now, since we've given it some time, there's been a response from a Tesla engineer. There's been some conversations. Elon chimed in very briefly. And they're claiming it's not the car rusting. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Mike?
Well, yeah, if I have to carry around a bottle of barkeeper's friend to clean my truck, there's something on there, whether it's rust you can have rust in the technical term, which is oxidation, or you can have rust, which is something that's a contaminant that looks and feels and kind of gritty like the real thing. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
The fact I have to use a bar cleaner on my truck to keep it clean, that's a bit much.
Yeah, so that was basically the recommendation, right? They
that
essentially
seems to be the pretty much universal. Everybody is settling on that as the effective way to keep the panels clean without doing damage. Gets the fingerprints off, keeps the sheen even, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I guess what it looked like was, so what are people seeing? Like, I guess you look on the truck, Cybertrucks, right? They're stainless steel panels, and what they were seeing is like little speckles of rust. So it's not like you have like a rusting section. It's more of just speckles. And the argument from this engineer, and I guess some could say from Tesla, like Elon agreed with the statement and responded on the tweet. This is all on a Twitter thread. I refuse to call it X. Basically there was a they essentially said it's not the car that's rusting, it's particulates that are on the surface that are looking like rust or even could be rusting depending on what they are, but it's not the panel itself rusting.
So you could argue that. So this is something that pops up in detailing all the time. It's iron contamination in paint. The iron particles will fall out of the sky, land on the paint, and embed themselves into the paint. And you buy chemicals that you spray on the paint to basically dissolve the iron and get rid of it. You would expect these particles to fall off the stainless. I mean, there's nothing that they should be able to embed themselves into, but apparently with the surface the way it is, that satin scratch finish, there's all kinds of places for this stuff to embed itself.
Yeah, I would think on a microscopic level, there's actually quite a bit of surface area. So yeah, small specks would have some place to sit and embed.
Well, at a normal paint job, you'd wax it, and the wax seals and helps prevent that. But since you're not waxing your stainless or even sealing it that I'm aware of, I haven't seen a stainless sealer.
Right. I mean, a normal car produced, and most cars, they're not stainless, but they're steel. They're dipped in some electrolytic process, and they are kind of sealed in like zinc or something. So I think there's plenty of places for things to sit and nucleate.
I think after a Cybertruck goes through a season of winter back east with all the salt on the roads and some serious contamination, it'll be interesting to see what shows up. I mean, right now it's just incidental crap falling out of the air.
Yeah, but I have to say what also came out is in the manual for the vehicle. There's basically here's the owner's manual of the car, and it's telling you Well, I mean, in this case, it's basically making you responsible, right?
It is.
You know, it says wipe off contaminants immediately.
Right, like
if
bird
bird
crap,
poop
get
or whatever,
it off right away.
yeah, you know, we all try to do that, but sometimes it's just not practical. I'll be interested to see Dirty Tesla when he finally gets his Cybertruck, and if he just, you know, he doesn't like to wash his car, if he lets it
Yeah,
sit.
that's true. He makes a point of it.
I mean, you know, maybe it will all even out into a healthy patina, as they say, right?
Well, the other thing I've seen on the Cybertruck Reddit threads is mismatch in panel tones. The panels get like a different shading to them. And again, this barkeeper's friend seems to be the magic touch to kind of even all that out. But I'm wondering what's happening to the metal where it gets this different tone relative to another adjacent panel. I mean, is it oxidation? Is it just contamination? Don't know.
Is it a different batch of steel? You know, is it slightly different metallurgically? You know,
It could be. I mean, I would expect as much.
They're gonna need to bin the panels like they do LEDs
Oh god.
yeah.
to get the exact color.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I mean, they could do that, right? As they cut it up into panels, do a little optical inspection, and okay, these are the ones that are closest in hue, and bin those together.
Well, so some of the manufacturing videos, because back to your point, is I see them punching panels out, but they tend to punch out a given panel per spool of metal. And then they get the next spool, then they punch a different panel. So if there are variations in the manufacturing of the seal, then yes, you're right. I can easily see different graduations of shading.
Yeah, I mean, you hope it's not that, right?
I doubt it.
I mean, one of the goals of manufacturing, I guess most anything, is minimizing variation, and so hopefully
You're
they
talking the
work that
raw
out.
material here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I doubt that the material. I mean, it's possible, but I would imagine it's most likely, you know, dust, pollen, like whatever. Like take your pick.
That's serious
You
problem.
know, well, I mean, I've seen it on cars. Like I definitely feel like contaminants will make it look like it could have a different shade or be a different
Sure.
color depending on what it is, and you're gonna hear about the scenarios where somebody's like, "Oh my god, this is different," or you're gonna notice that like thing that stands out. This happens on every car, lots of car. Like it's there was a video of a white car that's painted where they zoomed in and showed like similar contamination.
So
Right?
I wonder how much is the halo effect from the Cybertruck. I mean, there's such a high expectation that goes with this truck that people are kind of looking at the microscopic level. To Elon's point about what was it, 10 micron accuracy he wanted? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, definitely a big part of it is irony. You know, it's like, okay, here's this thing, the stainless steel, and you look at the headlines, and then also the thumbnail images on. I'm not. Hopefully, we didn't do it, but we'll see. Like all the thumbnail images on various videos where they'll show a Cybertruck, and it looks like it's rusted to hell. The whole thing is orange, and that's not what people are actually seeing at all, right? It's just little spots you really
Tiny
have to sort of
specks.
get close up on.
The
So
pictures I've seen on X were little tiny small spots that you had to kind of zoom in to see.
yeah, so I mean, it's probably, if you had some Scotch Brite, you'd probably just wipe it out. So I don't know. I it's probably overblown. I am really interested in a year, 2 years, cars that are in the Northeast, that get a lot of salt,
Harsh environment.
and I'll be curious to see how that goes, because it has big implications, right? DeLorean, back in I guess that car came out in 81.
80s,
The prototype was in 76, I think, and then the first car was like 81 or so. You don't hear too much about them having trouble. You hear about them using a little bit of Scotch Brite or whatever and maintaining it. But there's probably a reason most of the industry is not doing this, and it's typically because it's more expensive for some reason, right? Even though there are more steps, maybe it's cheaper to actually just take a car and you dip it,
And paint it.
the body in white, and you paint it, right? And so for Tesla, you really hope, or I'm sure they really hope, that this ends up being a cheaper process, especially since they like to sort of redo things from the ground up. And it will have some implications, like, that future car, that Model 2 or whatever we're talking about. If they're able to do that, stainless steel, that would be interesting. But so we'll see. I mean, another open question is crash worthiness of the vehicle, we had some images, right?
We've seen 2 crashes so far. At least I've seen 2 postings. One was the Toyota that happened on a month ago. There was a recent crash where a Dodge Ram rear-ended
a Dodge Ram. Would you say rammed
Dodge Ram rammed the Cybertruck?
Rammed the Cybertruck?
And as you can see in the picture, left a very pretty image.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a tweaked bumper. The bumper's definitely tweaked, but the tailgate might be tweaked. It's kind of hard to
now
say.
You know what, that's one of those things where you say that'll just buff right out. I actually think that will buff right out.
Probably would. I think most of it probably would. But
so now let's see the truck. How did the Ram do?
Not so much.
Yeah. Well, but again, crumple zones, right? It's supposed to smash up like that so that the occupant doesn't experience as much acceleration and jerk.
It's crumpled. I mean, you got an entire front end kicked back to the motor, it looks like. So that's probably a total.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. It's an older Ram. If I'm judging the oxidized headlight covers, it's probably been around a while.
Yeah, but so the question for the Cybertruck is, like in the crash test that they showed, I didn't feel like there was much space for actual crumple zone. It seemed to more shatter than crumple. The main goal is not transferring or reducing the amount of energy transferred into the passenger cell. And then the other thing is pedestrian safety. And if we think about what this cheaper car, which would hopefully become ubiquitous, you would need it to really be good about pedestrian safety and all the sharp edges on this thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
So speaking of edges, I want you to look at this picture of the rear of the Cybertruck closely. It's been hit pretty hard, and yet the gaps on the tailgate are still intact. The taillight is intact. I mean, aside from the mark on the stainless steel panel and the bumper, you'd never know it was hit.
Yeah.
It's impressive. I'll give him that.
Well, as Elon said, in any highway argument, the Cybertruck will win. Is that how he put it?
So far.
Yeah, I mean, from a safety standpoint, you basically want everyone to drive giant marshmallows, right? Like, you don't actually want these metal.
Yeah, you don't want these big, heavy, hard things. You want the front end to be a lump of clay that just sort of.
So I wonder how
the
much
marshmallow getting tossed around on the inside.
Yeah, so that's what I wonder is, how much is Cybertruck essentially going to benefit from the fact that all the other vehicles on the road are designed with crumple zones and things like that? And is it going to turn into, well, your worst accident is a Cybertruck with a Cybertruck, right? That's going to be the worst scenario for a driver. But hopefully hopefully they take some learning from this, and whatever they do for their Model 2, it's kind of a little bit more catered towards.
Did you say Cybertruck versus Cybertruck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
is that like Zeno's paradox? Is that what that was?
Yeah, like a Cybertruck colliding with another Cybertruck will probably be your worst accident.
The unstoppable object against the unmovable object.
Exactly.
I'm sure there was an episode of Knight Rider about that one.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, they make something with crumple zones and things in mind, because you don't want the energy transferring to your brain that's slamming into your skull, right? Like, you want the car to crumple to take some of that. But yeah, I don't know. We also don't know how hard this really was, right? And the angle and things like that. It's possible. It's possible it looks worse than it is for the
looks
for the
pretty
truck.
straight on, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. Well, if you look at the rear tailgate, it looks, I mean, you got a perfect image of the grill.
Yeah, pretty much.
And this is, ironically, this is one of the times where the favorite saying on the Reddit various Tesla boards is, it'll buff out. It's probably true. This will probably buff out.
Yeah. Looks like it.
Anywho.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll learn a lot more of these. I would love to see like actual, NHTSA testing of the crashing, but they don't have
They
to
haven't
because of
done
the
it yet,
volume.
have they?
Yeah, they don't have to. They don't require testing every new model. There's certain guidelines as long as you follow certain rough, regulations and things like that. They don't require, like, if you send it to certain facilities and whatever, like, that have already, I don't know how it all works exactly. Doug, I'm sure, probably does.
Well,
But anyway, the
the other thing is that the Cybertruck is still a relatively rare beast.
yeah,
There are only so many on the road given the current production rate. So, if it was I don't know, a Toyota Corolla, right? I mean, obviously that one's getting done because there's so many on the road.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Now I have to say, so purple side, black forever. I agree with our comment from our viewer here. The great thing is if you hit this panel on your construction site or farm, it's minor cosmetics. And that is true, right? That's a selling point, and that's part of what Elon originally said with the Cybertruck. He wants it to be durable, because the argument is if you're using it for construction or using it for work, it's going to get beat up. It's going to get hit a bit, and you don't want it to, like, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
If you hit your, I was gonna say, and if you hit your farmhand on the farm with the Cybertruck, there's going to be minor cosmetics.
Hopefully you aren't hitting a person. But yeah, in theory, like, it'd be nice for work, tools and other things, things leaning against it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how passenger safety and pedestrian safety come into play as more of them end up on the road. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on this one? Should we move on?
Doug's got a thought.
No, I got nothing. I'm just saying, in terms of the rusting, I think it's overblown. It's a good ironic headline, and so it gets a lot of press.
This one.
And
do you think, like, are you surprised that some of these are more of them are not wrapped? Like, would you expect most Cybertrucks to get wrapped, or do you think most of them are not?
I've seen a lot of them wrapped.
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the beginning, I think most of them will be wrapped just because of the kind of customer that you have at that level, the one that's already paying an extra $20K for the pleasure of getting it. In fact, Tesla even added something with the referral credits. Like, you can cash out like 30K referral credits to get pushed up in line. So you get, you burn through a bunch of referral credits and another 20K to get your car. And I wouldn't be surprised that that's the case for the entirety of this year of 2024.
So in theory, if you're wrapping it, the speckle drama that people are seeing won't really be a factor, because you won't have that.
It depends when those spots are getting there. Some of the theory is it's happening in transport. It's happening from bits from rail wheels, and it could happen someplace else in the environment of the manufacturer. And so I don't know what happens if I mean, it'd be sad if you get this wrap and then a few years later you take off the wrap and then what's grown underneath it. Part of the wrapping process is there's a lot of liquid goes on there. Of course, without oxygen, maybe it's okay. You squeeze out those bubbles. Maybe it gets arrested fairly quickly. But, it depends when it's happening. And some of the wraps are clear wraps. It'd be really obnoxious to see spots underneath your clear wrap.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope, most of the time when you wrap it like that, certainly clear ones, you detail it first. So you would hope that they would get the spots out.
True.
Now, the real sign will be, like you said, you mentioned earlier, though, like the Northeast, the weather in the Northeast, the snow, the salt on the road. The wraps aren't going to protect you from that, because that's going to be underneath. That's going to be in parts where you don't see, where they don't wrap.
Yeah, and the normal process of a typically painted car is that you get the whole frame, the body in white, and the whole thing gets dipped, and the whole thing gets painted. The whole frame, underneath the car and everything too. And if Tesla isn't doing that, you have to wonder about the frame of the vehicle. Those DeLoreans actually had, if you want to look into rust with the DeLoreans, they did have frame rust. It wasn't so much the body panels, but the frames were rusting. So like any vehicle of that era.
Our friends overseas in Germany have been testing EVs for rust, And they're kicking it back, saying EVs are prone to it because the manufacturers tend to put the least amount of paint on they can, and they don't do the undercoating. Anything to save weight, the EV manufacturers don't do.
Sure.
And so it kind of leaves you open to a wider range of corrosion issues.
Yeah, that makes
interesting.
sense.
So,
Well, I just
Yeah, maybe.
it wouldn't be me if I didn't just throw this plug out there though during this conversation. Is I have to say one positive of Rust is my favorite programming language. So it is what I've been working in, before the podcast, after the podcast. Anyway, sorry. It's a terrible engineering joke.
Why call it Rust? They could have called it Decay.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know why they started with Rust, but the programmers that use it are called rustaceans, like crustaceans.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's
Their
terrible.
logo is a crab.
Okay.
And yeah, anyway, it's good times. Anyway, so Cybertruck will certainly bring it up again if we learn more, if we get more details as more folks get Cybertrucks and more potential rusting problems. Hopefully not. So moving on to other potential problems, Rivian. This is a terrible segue. Rivian not doing so great right now. Financially now, it's kind of debatable, I guess, if how you want to say they're doing financially. So they lost like $2 billion or something last year, which is technically better than the year before. I think the year before they lost over $3 billion. So they're moving
Positive
in
trend.
the right direction. Positive trend. But yeah, so they lost a lot of money still, and they announced another set of layoffs. So I think this is what, their third or fourth set of layoffs, something like that.
yes. Although I will qualify what you said. The numbers I researched before the show, last year's loss ranged anywhere from 5.4 billion to 2 billion. So it depends who you're
What a
talking
range.
to and how they counted the
Man.
numbers.
I mean, EBITDA is definitely accounting, magic to hide numbers.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That's a big range.
It's a huge
It's a
Oh,
public
range,
company. That should be fairly laid out at this point, right?
I
You would
looked
think.
at Business Insider, I looked at Fortune magazine, and they all had different numbers. So
Interesting. Okay.
Now they're losing. Okay, so that,
they're losing
often
a lot of money.
they talk about losing money per vehicle, right?
Yes, they are.
And that always sounds
a considerable
terrible
amount.
because it's like, oh, maybe you should sell less or sell fewer vehicles so that you don't lose as much. But it's not exactly that, right? It's whatever other overhead stuff is going
there's
on.
a fixed cost to building the vehicle, whether you sell one or if you sell 500,000. There's still a fixed cost. The machines cost money, the materials cost money, training the people costs money.
Right. So, when you're losing money on every vehicle, the argument of, just sell more it doesn't always work out. But it must be that, though, right? They must just need to sell more because whatever their main capital expenses they need to be actually making money, right?
They've got their Hail Mary coming up on March 7th, and that'll be the brand new baby brother to R1S. It's going to be the R2, and it's roughly the size of a Maverick or a Santa Fe.
The R2. They need to have like a sub version called the D2.
D2, yeah.
So that they can have an
Right.
R2D2.
Yeah, I think that's coming for sure. So before I do want to jump into that, before we jump into R2 though, so just to reiterate on this, so they're I guess they were losing money per vehicle.
Yes.
And so obviously they're losing money annually. But I just happened to look up numbers. I saw last year they were losing the second quarter. They announced they were losing like $32,000 to $33,000 per vehicle.
Ooh, that hurts.
However, in the fourth quarter of last year, they were losing $43,000 per vehicle. So,
Well, they're in good.
Yeah,
company.
so-
I mean, Ford loses about 30,000 per Lightning they sell. I mean,
sure.
Yeah,
I
but
guess
you
the
assume
problem
Ford is
is
making
Ford-
money on their other vehicles, right?
Yeah. Ford doesn't lose money on every car they sell. Most of the cars they sell, they make money. Rivian being a company that only sells two models and they're EVs, both EVs, they definitely need to work on figuring this out. So yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is expenditures, and so they're doing this layoff. The layoff is 10% of the salaried employees. So I think the numbers were something like they have over 16,000 employees, but 10% of their salaried employees are going to lay off only a few hundred people. So most of their employees are not salaried. That's going to be like your manufacturing folks, your guys
This
physically
strikes me as a
building
very
the cars.
focused layoff.
Yeah. So, so I mean, all right, they're trying to reduce costs that way. What can they do to increase costs? Because what I worry about here, Mike, is, and we'll talk. I guess we can talk about the R2, making a newer car that costs less, and it's certainly making a new model, as we saw with Tesla. Whenever you make a new model, you lose a lot of money, right? Like, it's hard to make a new model. You've got to do all the tooling, all the production lines, all this figuring all that crap out. And so you don't make money right away. You make money eventually on those models as you get costs down.
I think it's all about positioning, because there's been a lot of talk online about this being the Model 3 moment for Tesla.
Okay.
For Rivian.
For Rivian.
Yeah.
And the idea is you get a model out there that's cheap enough that the masses can afford it, and now you can start actually getting real volume. And if you look at what they're going to do, so they're actually going to produce this in Georgia. They've got a brand new factory they're bringing online for the R2 in Georgia with a capability of 400,000 vehicles per year. Now, that's not what they're selling today by any stretch, but they've got a vision. They're going for it.
Sure. I mean, their cars are very expensive. I mean, they're Model S, Model X range prices right now.
Yes.
So
I think they're literally trying to emulate the Model 3, where it's a much cheaper version of an EV that they can crank out in high numbers.
Okay, so I guess though, when I look at it, it's like, sure, the Model 3 is what kind of like was the rocket ship for Tesla to be huge, to be the size that it is. However, was Tesla losing money on every Model S that they sold before the Model 3 came out? I would assume not.
No, I mean,
I'm not sure
let's
I'd
see.
assume that.
So the history was so on the Roadster, that was like the first 500 Roadsters. They were definitely losing money on those, and that had a big drama because that actually raised prices on people that had already paid ahead of time. The Model S, it depends how you look at it, right? Tesla, I don't remember exactly what year, but Tesla eventually became profitable, right? So if overall the company is losing money, you can make the argument, oh, they're losing money on every vehicle they sell because overall they lost money, right? But I think, in reality, they designed the Model S in a way that they could make money, but they're also spending a lot of money. So that's not an easy way to look at it.
Sure.
But certainly, I mean, now they're profitable. So
that's fair. So it may not be that they're actually losing money per car. It's more if you look at how much they made from the cars and how much the company
is costing
is costing.
I mean,
that's how they're
actually
doing that.
If you make the tie-in, Rivian is having these layoffs. Tesla, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but that year that they became profitable, part of the reason they became profitable is they literally decimated the employees. They laid off 10% of the company just to become profitable that year. And a lot of the employees that they laid off were, basically they just figured out who's making the most money, and those are the people. Like, they tend to be sort of manager type people that were laid off, or people that were going to get certain benefits or whatever. And often a lot of those people end up getting hired back, but they get hired back, sort of horizontally, like in a similar but different position, but their benefits kind of reset, as opposed to getting the credit for the time they've already spent with the company. So
sure.
So the strategic thing about, okay, we need to save money so that we can be profitable, and Rivian, I guess, could be doing something similar here.
Sure. Yeah, before the show, before we went live, we were talking about, like, we were looking at the stock price because we were curious. And I just, to preface, this is not financial advice. do not use this to do any decisions. That's not what we do. But we looked at it, and it's like Rivian stock has basically plateaued. When they first IPO'd, they peaked. They were over $100 a share. It was like $130 a share or something. Right now, they're at like $10 a share. They're like as the bottom of the bottom. So the question is, are they going to rebound? Or are they going to pull through? This might be a time to invest if you believe in that company, if you believe in their product. But I don't know. It's
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to think about. I mean, if you if you look at them, they started pretty high, and why? Because people are like, oh, this is the next
the
Tesla,
new Tesla.
and the
Yeah,
people that missed the boat on the Tesla, or even the people that did well, then like here was another
right.
opportunity.
Well,
But yeah, I mean, it's unless you look close, it's relatively. I mean, the average is pretty monotonic, like downward downward
Right.
slide. Um, but I think Rivian has. I think as a company, I still think that they can do fairly well. They have backing from customers like Amazon, and they I think they have a compelling product. Many people will say, okay, people that want EV trucks, that the Rivian is the proper EV truck right now, better than the Ford, and Cybertruck is kind of kind of a separate thing
It's
in that
probably
it's
what I would buy if I wanted a truck, right?
you're
As
right.
much as I prefer Tesla's vehicles and a lot of aspects of Tesla, if I wanted a truck, Rivian to me is the EV truck because it's a more traditional truck.
Now,
Um,
I
but
tend to think that they have a better chance than say like Lucid, and I'd like Lucid to be successful, but they have a very trying to have a very high end kind of niche product, and if you look at them, they're very volatile. At least Rivian has just kind of started high to sort of downward slope. Rivian, I mean, I'm sorry, Lucid is definitely more of a just volatile. These like just
yeah,
spiking
well,
up and
you
whatnot.
you should contrast it with the Tesla stock, which is at 191 right now. Although it's down from what it's been, it's still pretty high.
yeah, but Tesla's a whole nother animal. Like when it comes to
Yeah.
stock, like honestly speaking, when Elon's involved, like stock prices are not based on fundamentals. It's based on potential of Elon, right? Like just people are buying into what Elon's going to do.
Distortion field.
I feel like Lucid and Rivian are going to be closer to more traditional companies when you look at their stock pricing. But yeah, anyway, I was just very surprised, and I was like, oh, I'd consider it. Yeah, that's so we're on the screen is Tesla. Um, yeah, the funny thing is like Tesla made a market, right? They were a market maker,
Yeah.
which is very hard to do. Is ridiculously impressive that they did it. And that's why they went from nothing pretty steadily and then kind of exploded as as they became super successful. But now it's like now they're at a different part of their company, right? Tesla's got to figure out what other products, how do we expand, how do we grow? They're giving us all those offers now. Hey, you want to transfer your
Oh yeah.
FSD? Hey, you
Yep.
want to transfer your
You
supercharging?
notice you
Because
saved
they,
your
you know,
your Tesla you're looking at. Let's make a deal on it.
as long as you do it by the end of the quarter, right? They're
That's
running
right.
quarter
Yeah.
by
That's right.
quarter,
It's
like
all
ship
by
as
the
many
quarter.
cars as you
Yeah.
can. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how the market shakes up. The CEO of Rivian made some comments I saw in one article where basically he's blaming a lot on the global macroeconomic uh footprint or like our climate. I want to say like
That's always a factor.
and the fact that interest rates are so high, right? So one of the problems is when your car is really expensive and interest rates are high, you're going to sell way fewer cars, and that's why Tesla cut Model S, Model X prices by a lot, right? Like folks like me aren't happy because man, they dropped the MSRP by $40,000 in like a few months,
Yep.
which really hurt when I paid the 40K higher price not long before. But Tesla is able to do that because they're profitable, they make so much money, and their margins are so great. Rivian doesn't have those margins yet. They don't have that. They don't have their Model 3 to make that money. So it's not so easy for them. They can't just cut the 40K off their sticker price and sell when interest rates are high. So it'll be interesting to see like if interest rates come down, will they rebound, or is it really going to be this R2 which Mike was talking about? And we do have a picture if you want to show a rumored picture if you want to show what I sharing there.
Yeah. That's
This
the latest
is
spy shot.
this is a distance super zoomed in camera, terrible. Like if you actually look at it, it's very pixelated. But it just kind of looks like an R1S but smaller, right? Like it still looks like
They're,
an SUV.
they're I would put it into a mid-size, maybe a bit smaller.
But it's still like high. It's not like a sedan. It's like high
No.
up like an SUV,
No,
right?
it's high up like an SUV.
Yeah.
It'll be, and they're saying between 40 and 60K, which is kind of a sweet spot, I think.
40 to 60K MSRP ish. Yeah, that could be interesting.
But I mean, that puts it square against a Model Y.
I have to say, I have a friend right now that he just test drove a Model Y and he's interested in it. But his wife was complaining she wanted the air conditioned seats, right? That the refresh Model 3 has, that the Y doesn't have yet. And so I threw out there like, well, did you look at the Rivians? Considering like they wanted a bigger SUV. And the comment was, yeah, it's too expensive though. And it's just like, yeah, it really is.
Yeah,
but, 40 to 60K one, but by then the Model Y will be refreshed. So then that's the obvious one.
Rivian's trying hard because I spent the last 2 weeks looking at Rivian pretty seriously. And yeah, the prices are high. I'll grant you that. But if you really wanted to get in one, you can get into a lease on the Rivian pretty cheap right now. And the thing about the lease on the Rivian is they make it dead simple at the end to buy it out if you want to. Unlike Tesla that says, nope, you got to give us the car back no matter what. So,
that's still ridiculous.
It's attractive to a lot of people though.
No, I mean a lease should be simple.
The fact you can't buy your car back after
that's just some ridiculous hubris on Tesla's part, and it's like, oh, they made the promise we want them back.
5 years ago, when they were going to do the robotaxi, that's fine. But now I think it's just
that was their argument then. They should, reality should have caught up with whoever makes that decision and made it a little more simple. Because that's just dumb.
And the discussions on some of the other forums is very much that the fact that you can lease the Rivian, get into it at a low payment or relatively low payment. And that 3-year mark, you can buy it really easy. I mean, people were talking about it. You just walk in, sign the papers, and out you go. No sweat.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm still in the camp. So I've never leased a car. I've only, purchased a few cars in my life. And so I've never leased one. But I have to say, when it comes to an EV, I would strongly consider it. Like from a technology standpoint,
because things change.
I feel like you should lease an EV and you don't want to buy it, right? Like it really is. You want the next tech, you want the new tech, the next gen. So I don't like, I get it. People complain that they can't buy outright their leases from Tesla, but I'd rather get a new Tesla every 3 years than, buy out the lease.
The other issue,
if it makes sense.
The other issue was that the Tesla lease terms were terrible. I mean, like the price was ridiculous.
Sure.
Sure. They still are, but they're still not much better.
Yeah, like when I was waiting back in 2016, you put down a deposit on a Model 3, and I wanted to go ahead and drive electric at that point, and the Model 3 wasn't going to be available for a couple of years. And so I leased a BMW i3, and BMW made it very easy. They're quite cheap. There was a federal and a state tax rebate that I was able to get. And also, you had the sense that BMW was selling these cars even cheaper because they needed these California zero emission credits so that they can continue selling their ICE vehicles. So that made perfect sense to lease that car, and they made it very, very cheap. And I did get some crap from Tesla folks. So why didn't you lease a Model S? Well, this BMW I was able to lease for around $200 a month, whereas the Model S was $1,000 a month, which was absolutely ridiculous, especially since I only drove maybe 10 miles a week. So that would have made no sense at all. And then of course the term, not just expensive, but the terms were just kind of a pain in the butt, and I wasn't sure about how the return would go. But I really enjoyed leasing that BMW i3. I had it long enough that I thought it was cool, but I was ready to be done with it when the Model 3 came, and Model 3 is definitely the superior vehicle. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For the amount that I drive, I probably shouldn't have purchased my car, but it's so much fun. I love it. Model S is,
well, that's really the bottom line,
great.
though, isn't it?
Right.
I mean,
so that's not a smart financial decision, but man, it's such a great car. I would buy it. I would do it again. But anyway, but yeah. So, all right. So Rivian losing money, doing some layoffs, but not necessarily out yet. They're still, they're thinking they're going to make profitability some point in the not too distant future. So we'll see how that goes. And competition is good. So we want
That's right.
competition in the market. It'll help drive innovation both for Tesla and for other companies. All right, so let's move on. Hydrogen. We're doing like a hydrogen redux. We talked about it some last week, but now we've got a little bit more to discuss on hydrogen. Something about some fuel cells partnership we didn't really explain, and some drama with Toyota now that Shell is killing all their things. So, Doug, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about what's going on with hydrogen cell partnerships?
Well, I just, we wanted to clarify a couple things. Last episode, Mike brought up something with the hydrogen fuel cell partnership, and I just mentioned that they're related to CARB. I wanted to just sort of clarify that a little bit. The hydrogen fuel cell partnership is a public-private partnership. I believe they were founded back in 1999, and at the time it was the California Fuel Cell Partnership. And at that time, what was going on? GM had recently killed the electric car, right? The EV1 was killed, and part of that was part of the reason that CARB got rid of the EV mandate back then, and that's what killed the car, was that California is no longer mandating it. And part of that was like, oh, there's this new technology, and there'll be hydrogen vehicles. And so, yeah, this group was basically an industry group that is mostly oil companies and a couple manufacturers. So Toyota and Honda were there, and then also, like a cryogen type company like Air Liquide or something. The kind of companies that can benefit from transporting cryogenic fluids around. Those are the kind of companies that are in this partnership. So I just want to sort of clarify what that is. So it's not just CARB. CARB is the California Air Resources Board. They're a part of what's now called the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership. But it's, so that's sort of the government side of it. But there are also these other industry companies that form it. It's funny that we talked about this, and I'm currently staying at a place in Mountain View, and in the in the parking lot I see a Toyota Mirai, and I'm just thinking about, oh, what is this guy doing? How is he able to fuel that thing? And I did search around. There are a couple places within a few miles that you could fill up hydrogen, but it just feels so it feels like it's sort of handcuffed, right? You think about, like, all these people in this fuel cell partnership. We had a little bit of a back and forth. Like, I tend to think that they're not so benevolent. I tend to think that especially the oil companies, they're there to slow down EVs and basically things that cut them out of the loop. They want to make sure they're in there and continue to be able to sell you a product. But I think on the benevolent side is the customer, right? The person that thought, oh, I'm doing something good for the environment by buying this hydrogen vehicle. And organizations like the Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership, most of what they're about is educating the consumer about the wonders of this technology. And I feel like, those poor folks were duped,
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Duped is the right word. After our discussion in the last podcast about the hydrogens, I did some poking around, and I do an annual road trip to Arizona. I basically go to Phoenix, I turn left, I go down to Tucson, and we kind of hang around down there, and we come back. And what I didn't realize until I started looking at a map, there is literally no hydrogen refill stations outside of California, in Arizona, or anywhere else I could really find. It's very much a California thing. And even where I'm at in Orange County, there are 12 or so stations around me, 5 of which are dead. The others seem to be alive, according to the map. But once I get out to Riverside County, which is maybe 30 miles down the road, there's nothing there. I mean, you buy this car, you're literally pinned to the city you're in because you don't have the range to get to the next city where the hydrogen refuel stations are, like San Jose, for example. It's a
Now, is this
terrible.
before or after they close all these stations?
This is before. This was
Yeah.
before. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a thing. I was poking around on Reddit, and there were people that bought their cars a year ago, and they were wanting to go to Arizona, and they were being told, "Don't. You got no place to fill it here." I mean,
Yeah.
you basically got to pay for it. And what came up this week is there was an interview with a couple that had bought a brand new Toyota, and they can't fill it. The one station that was near them has stopped. It gone. It's part of that shell shut down. And Toyota won't buy the car back, even though they can't fill it. But Toyota is giving them a hybrid to use until some indeterminate date. I'm not sure how long that's going to go on.
I mean, I looked into it a little bit too, and it looks like like a Toyota Mirai, which I think the MSRP was somewhere around
Was it like
63.
35? Was it that expensive?
It's 60, but then they're giving like a 40K discount or incentive, and then also they supposedly would give you free fuel for a year or two. But of course, like the actual hydrogen itself is almost $20 per kilogram, so it's not cheap fuel. So that promise never panned out. I think the thing about not buying the car back, I think that's definitely what all the manufacturers should do. They should just take it back, eat it, because they,
Bad idea.
but that admits it's done, right? That admits defeat. I think it really should be done. In Japan, they're still trying to push it. I think in part of it's because of the political power of a company like Toyota.
Right.
Toyota has they push their hydrogen, and they also have their hybrid synergy drive for the Prius, and they want to, and that's a lucrative technology for them that they license to other manufacturers. And they basically, it's funny too, because the hybrid was basically the answer to the death of the electric car back in the late 90s. Was that, okay, well, we have these hybrids. It was the electric car that you don't have to plug in, right? With terrible marketing, right? Like, but essentially all the energy for that comes from gas. But that worked great for them. I mean, Prius is a great brand that makes Toyota a lot of money, and basically they don't want to. It's that
Don't want to upset the
innovator's
customer.
dilemma, right? I mean, they don't want to stop that gravy train. They want to keep that going for as long as possible. And part of that distraction is the hydrogen stuff that I guess they've invested in with that Toyota Mirai. Honda had the Honda Clarity, which was the vehicle I couldn't think of last week. But I don't even think they make that anymore. But the Clarity was supposed to be, this purpose-built hydrogen vehicle, and it was sort of the first hydrogen vehicle that you saw reviewers driving. And then, after years of this hydrogen stuff dragging, they came out with a hybrid version and an EV version. And I remember the hydrogen people being so upset that there was an EV version of the Clarity, a battery EV version of the Clarity. But I think they quit. They probably canceled it. I think it was either 2021 or 2022. They don't make it anymore. So
Yeah, GM was part of that big effort for some
Yep.
years, except last year in 2023 when they rolled out their new game plan, hydrogen wasn't on the map at all. So
Yeah.
GM's
And it
basically
shouldn't
said
be.
they've walked away from it.
It
For
shouldn't be.
passenger vehicles, it's a dead end technology. And that was obvious to a lot of us then. And the people that promoted it back then were like, they'd make the comparisons, and they would always talk about EVs then versus hydrogen vehicles in the future, not thinking that, EVs will also
get better.
advance. And, the cost of batteries is, gone way down compared to what it was back in back in the early 2000s. So, and hydrogen hasn't really, how efficient a proton exchange membrane is, how efficient electrolysis is. Those things haven't changed much because those are fundamental. They're slightly engineering problems, but they're also fundamental physics problems. And, and that stuff doesn't change much, right?
Yeah. What they need is they need to convince Apple to create a product where they can put trillions of dollars into research and development, right? Because like batteries became so cheap because of consumer electronics primarily. and it accelerated it. And now it's like, yeah, but you don't have a consumer electronics growth market where you're
Or
doing
hydrogen.
research on like proton exchange membranes and
Yeah, I mean,
electrolysis, right?
so the research for that was the space
Right.
industry. So the whole sort of hydrogen fuel cell thing, that's where that was. But that is a end of research where things are very expensive, and it's governments, and the ubiquity is few and far between. Certainly consumer electronics, I mean, basically the Tesla Roadster was made out of what? It was laptop battery
batteries.
cells.
Yeah.
And why? Because there's already this whole consumer demand thing that brought the cost down. Ironically, solar panels, for example, are a lot cheaper than they used to be because of the flat screen TV industry, right? Like
Same
people want these
manufacturing tech.
exactly. People want these large flat panel TV sets, and so that drive to do that. Well, guess what? It's sort of similar manufacturing equipment is needed to make large solar panels. And so that's brought down the cost of solar panels. So, that kind of synergy, it just isn't going to exist for hydrogen. And even if it did, again, there's sort of fundamental physics limitations that, that aren't really gonna change anytime soon.
Please stop investing in hydrogen fuel cell cars. Does not make sense for passenger vehicles.
Or if you're going to do it, spend your own money. Okay.
Right.
Tesla installed their own charging infrastructure, and they did it themselves, right? Shell, all these other companies, Toyota, they basically wanted us,
government handouts to do it.
Johnny public and their tax dollars to pay for all this hydrogen infrastructure, this new hydrogen economy. I'm like, dude, if this is actually going to be profitable, then you guys take the financial risk. You guys, put the money in, and they're very reticent to do so. And obviously, Shell laughed. I mean, we got to be somewhat fair. I think part of the issue was that there were some parts that they needed for consumer level fueling that just weren't available, and so they couldn't repair their pumps. And after a couple months of them not being operational, it's just like, okay, let's just shut them down. But again, the demand is so low. But if you're the one holding the bag on there, you're the one that bought one of these Toyota Mirais, you're kind of stuck. So,
and to give some rough equivalents there, earlier Doug said, a kilogram of hydrogen is about $20 or something. A kilogram of hydrogen is equivalent of like a gallon of gas. Right. So that's not even worth it from a consumer standpoint. So yeah, anyway, it's silly, but it is what it is. So that's good. So Toyota is not refunding customers, but they are giving major discounts and offering cars temporarily.
Temporarily.
Temporarily letting them use hybrids. I'm assuming free of charge.
That's what the article said.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
But but even though they've got the free car, they are still being made to make payments on the brick that they can't drive.
Right,
which is
exactly
the killer.
That's some interesting accounting they've got going on there. Okay, so I guess another thing we did want to mention is this is something a lot of folks are waiting on and interested in. Performance Model 3. We finally had a sighting. We've finally seen it, sort of, maybe.
It's been maybe.
Rumors. I'll throw this over to Mike.
Rumors.
So where have we seen it? What have we seen? What do we know?
It was overseas. Spain, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
But not much is known. It was camouflaged, as you would expect. But there might be some bolstered seats in there for those of us that like to play high G's around turns, which would be nice. Keep your butt planted better. But there's so little that we haven't heard, it's all rumor at this point.
Sure. So how about why is the Performance Model 3 so sought after? Why do you think people are really interested in this car?
Why do people buy a Plaid?
Because they have way too much money.
They got
that's
probably one reason. But
this is a cheaper Plaid, right?
It's my opinion is it's going to be just that. It will be a cheaper Plaid. It may actually share some of the Plaid DNA. I mean, if Tesla really wanted to amp it up, and the fact that they brought out the Model 3 Highland as it is, extended range, and they said, yeah, we're not going to give you performance just yet. That makes me think they're really working on it for some reason, and making it with Plaid DNA would be a good reason for that. At least one can hope. I mean, it'd be awesome if they would use some of the Plaid engineering, like the motors, for example. Now, are we ever going to see carbon brakes on the Model 3? Maybe not.
What were they already doing with the, the pre-refresh, the performance Model 3s, right?
There wasn't a lot of difference between a performance Model 3 and an extended range Model 3.
Yeah, in fact, it was just a software switch, right?
It was a software, and the sway bar was a little beefier. The springs were a little beefier. Although I've been told in the recent vintages of the Model 3 that wasn't the case, but in the beginning it was. So.
Well, part of what's shown up is that we've seen some Model 3s with some camouflage on them, and that they have some fancier seats. Like, I don't think the performance Model 3, from the last couple of years had any different seats or any real different interior stuff. But what we've seen is some slightly better bolstering, and that was my observation of the sportier, the Audi and the Porsche I drove last week, was that they had, some nice seat bolstering, something that seemed more sporty. So, perhaps that's something we can look forward to. Yeah, if we had a nice vehicle with some perforated seats, those air conditioned seats that
So wish list Model 3 performance wish list would be Plaid motors, Plaid brakes, and air suspension. That would be a killer package.
So just to throw out there, the badge is not actually a Plaid badge. As a Plaid owner, I have to defend us Plaid owners.
Yes.
It is a ludicrous badge. So it is actually from Spaceballs, where they had the ludicrous speed.
Yeah.
That is the badge. So it's similar to a Plaid badge, but it's different colors.
And I mean, the only reason it comes up is we're, for the audio listeners, we're looking at a video that someone took and posted on Twitter. But so there's some shots in Spain. So I guess they look like Tesla's maybe filming some promotional material. But this guy's calling it Plaid. I don't think Tesla's ever used the Plaid term for the Model 3. That's reserved for the Model S.
Right.
And X.
Well, you can buy a logo.
They're officially, So basically, I'm pretty sure it was officially announced. I was just reading something about it, but they are still referring to it as the performance. So they're not changing it to say it's the Model 3 Plaid. It's literally the Model 3
and it's just that they happen to put a little badge on it, and the badge, it simulates a sort of Star Wars jumping to hyperspace sort of effect of the streaming lights coming towards you.
A huge joke on us.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised that Tesla would use that. And ludicrous is supposed to be a step below Plaid, right? Ludicrous speed was, and then Plaid was what came after that because tore through hyperspace or something. Right?
Yeah. And ludicrous is also what they used to call the Model S's highest performance. Like when you had
that was an extra.
Right.
A couple thousand
ludicrous mode. So, so this is in the parts catalog. So it's not a joke. Like, it's actually in the Tesla parts catalog that this ludicrous badge is going to be used on the Model 3s. They've updated their instructions on like repairing them, all that kind of stuff. So, so we should see that. Now, any guesses when we might see this get actually released? And is it going to be one of those fun, it's in Europe way before it's in the US things again?
Probably.
I expect this year. I mean, certainly they are already selling the, they probably won't tell you because they don't want to not sell cars and they don't want people waiting around for something. But, if they're already doing some promotional material type stuff, it'll probably be available in Europe fairly soon, given that the updated Model 3 was available in Europe before us. And then, then we'll get it. I would say this year, probably by Q2, I would guess that we get it.
That fast?
I mean, why not? End of Q2.
Parts?
So this
I
summer.
mean-
So I think it'll happen this summer. I mean, what are the parts really? I don't
It
think.
depends what they change. I mean,
So apparently, again, just what I was seeing, they added to the parts catalog. So they have the updated instructions. There's gonna be carbon fiber spoiler.
okay.
They have the ludicrous badge that'll be above the dual motor location. And there's also 2 new wheel designs, I believe.
50.
Nope, not necessarily 2. There's several new wheel designs. The repair manual has 5 different wheel options listed. So, anyway, so it'll be interesting to see, maybe those will all be available right
Yeah,
away. Maybe
I
they
mean-
won't all be available right away.
All of that is cosmetic kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
it's the
sure.
motor and suspension.
I'm sure that's already in place. I mean, it's just the same motors with okay, they'll just allow more to get pushed out. The batteries might be a little different because they might be a chemistry that's better with power. But I don't expect it to be any different. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did whatever they call it, the stealth or sleeper version also, where you can get essentially the Performance 3 without
without the badging.
without the spoiler and the
Yeah.
and the fancy, colored calipers and whatnot.
I wish I had fancy colored calipers. No, I'm just kidding.
You want the carbon disc brake kit. I know what you
Yeah.
want.
I don't think it's actually worth it for everyday driving, right? Like carbon ceramic brakes are not ideal for like
They need to get
regular
hot before
driving.
they even work right. And
Exactly.
If they're always
So-
on regen braking, what sense do they make?
Yeah.
They're for track.
So,
They're for track.
exactly,
For
for
bragging
track.
points.
um
Or
Yeah,
for rear ending the guy in front of you because they're cold. That's what
right.
they're for.
So I will say though, the software unlock for 200 miles an hour for Plaid requires you to buy that kit, or
It
you got to
does.
go after market and kind of do things you're not supposed to do that I won't talk about on the show
All
right now. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically what we want to cover. Anything else? Did I forget anything? Want to thank all you folks for hanging out with us. As always, like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Keep comments coming. If you want to be part of the conversation, feel free to leave comments in the chat. And you can always go over to teslamotorsclub.com, become a supporting member. That helps out.
Please do.
Thanks to our producers and all the folks helping us behind the scenes, Danny and Adam. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Laters.
Have a good one.
Peace.